Hello and welcome to the No Balls podcast. I'm your host Patrick McDonald. With me, co-host Sheldon Kaufman. This is episode 15 of the NBA preseason show, marking the halfway point. For this episode, we have the Indiana Pacers, last team in the Eastern Conference. We got anything on Indiana before we get started?
I'm just gonna say one word to describe this team: pace. All right,
Yeah,
that's it. That's all I got.
pace is a
That's
good
all I
word
wanted to
for it.
say. That's just a sneak peek into some of the stuff we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, for sure. I
Just
think
pace.
I didn't actually pull up the pace numbers, but it is a very valid point to bring up. They were for sure the the highest pace in the league this season. It was the emphasis of their offense. Really good thing. Really fun team too. If you want to
Yeah,
watch some fun basketball to watch, this is the team to watch. Um, so we can go ahead and just start on their record.
yeah. Let's
Uh,
go.
47 and 35, sixth in the Eastern Conference. And they made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, lost to the Celtics. On the pathway there, they beat the Knicks and the Bucks. We can definitely talk about this playoff run. First, we'll finish these record things. 48 and 34 expected record. Expected record. At home, 26 and 15. On the road, 21 and 20. So very solid there. Pre All Star break, 31 and 25, and then they really turned it up post All Star break, 16 and 10. Versus the East, 32 and 20. Versus the West, 15 and 15. In clutch games, they were 18 and 19. We can talk about that a little bit, and then in other games, they were 27 and 16. I'll go ahead and get the clutch thing. The reason they can't win in clutch games is because they can't defend, and we'll get into that later. But we can go ahead and talk about their playoff run because I think that's something that's really important to talk about with this team.
Yeah. So a young team. They kind of came out of nowhere with this playoff run for sure. Um, Kind of a thing for me to take with a grain of salt with this team is that during that playoff run, like we talked about in the last episode, Dame was out for a time, Middleton was out for a time, Ananobi was out, Brunson was out, Hardenstein was out, Mitchell Robinson was out. I don't even think I have enough fingers to count all the players that were out, between those two series. But this team still, I think, deserved to go to those Eastern Conference Finals. They fought two really hard fought series, especially with the Knicks. I think that was one of the most fun playoffs series in the playoffs. But this team is just fun and exciting, and yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
really. I thought they could have done. They might have, won a game or two just because of how they play against the Celtics, but it just didn't happen. But just really fun team.
yeah,
Came out of
and
nowhere.
with this playoff run, I like to highlight these deeper playoff runs because four teams a year make this type of a playoff run, and maybe one every 3 years is a six seed doing it. Um, this was actually a really fun playoff run. Um, we'll get into the numbers about their defense. It was a lot better at the end of the season than it was at the start of the season. Um, and a couple of fun things with the storyline here is they played the Celtics pretty solid the first couple games against the Celtics. They
Yeah.
didn't win any of the games. They blew a couple leads in games one and two. Um, it just not not good in the final 2 minutes of the game in those first couple games. Also,
Yeah.
game seven against the Knicks, I feel like they shot 78% for the game. It was
Oh,
one of the more impressive game sevens I've ever seen. Um,
they're very efficient as a team overall. Just from anywhere on the like it was yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that Knicks series really embodied what this team was last season, which blown leads in the first two games. Um, Maybe not blown leads, but losing in clutch in the first two games. And then outside of that, their offense was almost unstoppable for the rest of the series. Of course, some of that coincided with Anunoby being out, but they couldn't miss the last what felt like 4 games of the series. Really powerful offense. We'll get into that now. Offense, defense, 20th or 120.5 offensive rating, ranked second in the league, only behind the Boston Celtics. Really good stuff. And we'll get into it with like their lineup stuff. There's belief that it could have been a little bit better than it even was. Defense, 117.6 defensive rating, 24th in the league. Obviously a team that was very much slanted to one end of the court. We'll break down their offense first, the exciting part of the Pacers. 11th in transition offense. Doesn't necessarily align with what you would think of the Pacers, but they weren't a team that was running a lot in transition because they weren't getting a lot of stops. They were a team that would make their half-court possessions faster than anybody else's, and it became really hard to take this away. They lost in the play-in championship, correct, against the Lakers. You really saw
Yeah.
in those playoff type settings that this team, what they do well is hard to take away, regardless of if it's a regular season game or a playoff type of game. We'll break down their half-court offense now. 6th in pick-and-roll ball handler efficiency, 8th highest frequency. They were really solid at it, 83rd percentile. They ran it a good bit. Very solid unit there. 1st in pick-and-roll roll efficiency, 4th in frequency. They were getting points at the rim, free points all the time. And it wasn't just their bigs, it was their wings too. It was a lot of their guys. 100th percentile in that point. 2nd in post-up efficiency, 20th in frequency, 97th percentile. This is kind of, once they got Siakam, this was the change-up they threw in the half-court on people when they could slow him down a little bit. Now we have Pascal Siakam. He gets the ball a ton. If it's not that high-paced Halliburton spread pick and roll as well. And we'll go into this team stuff about that spread pick and roll, what made it so great last season. And their final bit, 8th in isolation efficiency, which it was actually a weakness for them. They were only 76th percentile, but then you look into the fact that they barely had to run isolation because their half-court possessions were so fast. 29th frequency. So, their thing that they're technically the weakest in, even though they're still really solid in, they don't run a ton. This was a crazy offense last season. Additional offensive notes, 16th in offensive rebounding, 9th in three-point percentage, 15th in three-point attempts, 16th in pull-up three percentage, and then 13th in pull-up three attempts. So I will let you have the floor on their offense. There's a lot to dissect with them. I'll let you get the floor.
Yeah, well, you talked about it when they got Siakam. I mean, obviously Pascal Siakam, one of the better post-up players in the league. Just honestly, just a huge, huge ad for them. Um, Also, you talked about a lot of the pick and roll stuff and how great that was. I think a lot of that has to do with the emergence of Tyrese Halliburton becoming. I think that he is an elite playmaker up there with Luka Doncic and Trae Young, and he's still really young. I mean, you're talking about a 6'5" guard that is averaging 10 assists per game, almost 11. I mean, just really incredible stuff. And I think that's why this team worked so well was because of him. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about some scheme stuff too, but just really interesting stuff.
And we're for sure going to be talking about Tyrese and the general landscape of point guards in the Eastern Conference in the next episode, so we won't hit on it too much. But I think he's really good. He's amazing. You got any more offensive notes? We get to start on defense. All right, defense. This is we just went through the great. Now we're going to go through the ugly here. Like we said, 24th rated defense, 15th in transition defense. That's league average, pretty solid. That's where it basically ends with them. I think it was it was the Pistons a couple episodes ago that had one of the least impressive things I'd ever seen. I'm gonna look at them real quick. See what I think they totaled to. Yeah, they totaled to 20 total percentile points. Pacers are a little bit better on defense. Um, Either way, 30th in pick and roll ball handler efficiency, 0 percentile. Teams knew it, second highest frequency. It was not good. Um, 24th in roll defense, 19th frequency, 21st percentile, whatever. Not very good, but it's better in comparison to some of their other things. 26th in post defense, not very good. Teams knew it. First frequency, 14th percentile. And then last in isolation defense, we're not good at it. Teams knew it. Fifth frequency, 0 percentile. And then just to add on top of things, 26th in defensive rebounding. Not a good defensive unit. I'll let you talk on their defense here. Uh, Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just not really good. I think it's kind of some scheme stuff. Um, but I mean, Miles Turner, really mobile, not very big. They like to do a lot of switches. Uh, just really not a lot of good isolation defenders, kind of like you said, and like the stats are saying, just a lot of guys that aren't good at defense, but are really good at offense. So like we saw with the Pacers a lot last year, is they would put up a lot of like scoring bunches, have crazy offensive numbers, but teams would still, they'd still be keeping up with them even if they were dropping 120 points, 125 points.
They had an all-world offense, but they would make you look like an all-world offense if you played against them. I think the big
Yeah,
thing with them is they realized later in the season that they don't need to run offensive slanted lineups with Halliburton. Before there were a lot of healed Matherin lineups, Doug McDermott in those lineups too. That just like they didn't need that extra offense next to Hallie. They realized that later in the year, and there's also more lineup stuff that can show that they can have a good offense even without slanting their lineups offensively. And I think their defense is going to improve just by some of the lineups that they run next season. Um, we can go ahead and start with scheme stuff. I want to make this point first before I give you free reins to talk about whatever you want here. They only had two lineups that played more than 20 games together. One of them had 20, the other one had 25, I believe. This was a team that was sneakily, like, there was a lot of turnover within season. Tyrese missed a ton of games. And then there was a good stretch where Tyrese he was clearly not healthy, but he was playing, so he would be all NBA eligible. And he just didn't look himself. This is what I mean when I say that their offensive rating could have easily been first in the league. There was a lot of change going on with this team within the season. Other lineup stuff, they're playing one center, but they'll often play another big next to the center, whether that's Siakam, Obi Toppin. Sometimes it was Jarris Walker. Not much, though, for them. But they still like to run those double big lineups because, Pascal and Toppin were pretty solid offensive players. It got some size on the court. Their other interesting thing there is they don't have, like, normal sized power forwards. Like I said with Pascal and Toppin, they're kind of bigs either way. There are other guys that they would play at the four were Matherin and Neesmith. Other than that, there was a lot of there was no real other bigger wings out there, so it was almost you have a big or you have a wing playing power forward for them, and I think that could be a reason why they really struggled to defend. And once Pascal got there, they got a little bit better defensively, just because he was a legitimate power forward. I'll let you get the floor in scheme talk if you want to start that.
yeah. You were doing defensive first.
You can do either one.
All right. Well, we'll talk about the offense. Just insane pace and speed. I mean, this is you kind of your head was just it was like watching a tennis match, watching them play. I mean, immediately as they scored, Halliburton would sprint up the court with the ball. I mean, just insane pace of play. They're good in transition, even though it doesn't happen often. When it does happen and they get stops, they're very good in transition. Lots of off-ball movement, lots of passes. They're very efficient when passing the ball as well. Was a thing I saw. They also like to move a lot. Lots of lots of movement. No one's ever staying still really on that court, even the centers and bigs. And when they run that pick and roll action, they usually pass it to whoever the roll man is in that situation. That's who they like to go
Yes,
to,
certainly.
which is different than what we've seen from some other teams.
Yeah, they have kind of the Swiss Army knife that is Miles Turner that really helps them with their offense because their main screener, who's a really solid screener, can also pop out to the three really well, and he's a really good roll threat. So it allows them to do so much offensively. Not even when they run all the spread pick and roll that they do, unlike teams like Atlanta and Charlotte and Brooklyn, it wasn't just stagnant watching Tyrese Halliburton just dribble around. And I think some of that has to do with some of Tyrese's own limitations, but it was also to the benefit of the team that there was so much going on. It's a lot harder to defend. Um, and then it helps that Tyrese Halliburton is the great pull-up shooter that he is, and the really great straight line athlete that he is, getting to the rim. Even if he doesn't finish at a super high rate there, like it's still a rim field goal attempt. It's very efficient offense, and it helps that he has what it feels like the biggest one, at least one of the bigger um, golf. He has all the caddies or all the clubs in his bag,
Yeah,
is what it feels like with passing
yeah,
the ball. Um,
yeah.
defensively,
Insane
Turner,
passer.
yeah, defensively, Turner kind of just does what the team needs to do. Um, he's probably best in a drop, and they've moved away from that a little bit this year because they're playing so quick. A lot of the time, like the other teams are also going to play that quick, so they need to stop the initial action. It doesn't matter if they protect the rim a lot of the time. So Turner would come up to play the level a lot more. Um, Other than that, they like to switch, but they like to keep Tyrese off the ball. Um, Nemhard, Naismith, those are typically their primary defender guys. Um, they play pretty similar to how you know it's standard defense, but they don't really have the personnel to make it really work. Um, yeah, it's it's not a very good defensive team either. Is it's worth saying that. Did you have anything on their defense?
I mean, I saw it. I mean, whenever TJ McConnell's in the game, uh he tends to be running some full court press. It's not something. It's just at times I saw them go to that, especially in the playoffs, and they kind of have a chaotic defense. At least from what I saw, um, saw some games in the playoffs but during the regular season. Just like you said, Miles Turner having a guard like guards and wings, kind of weird. You know, really good rim protector. Not really who you want laterally doing that kind of stuff, but yeah, I mean, I think like I said and like you said, they don't have the guys or the scheme. The scheme isn't fitting with the guys they have.
Yeah, I mean, and we don't want to talk too much about a not good defensive team, but uh, you know the scheme itself was pretty uh like standard. One guy I want to bring up here. Okay, so I was checking Mark Dagnall from the Thunder because they play pretty similarly to the Thunder with you had just mentioned the chaos. It seems like they're a team that really likes to at least try to speed you up on defense, force you into some turnovers because they know they can't really guard you if they don't do that. Um, Interestingly enough, he has no ties to Carlisle at all, so I'm not not sure. They just play very stylistically similar to the Thunder. It's just they don't really have the athletes or the type of defenders that OKC does. And Turner probably isn't the defensive piece that Chet is, even if Turner is a really good guy. I think they need to have him by the rim more is a big thing for them, but
Yeah,
they can't do that if they're playing, or they need the other team to slow the game down for that to happen. And in the playoffs, this happened, and they were pretty good in the playoffs. Their defense was better in the playoffs. Um,
seems like it always is for teams.
yeah, coaches Carlisle, like we said, this is I believe his third year here. Really solid head coach. Coached forever. Sneakily, he's one of the older coaches in the league. Previously had been an Indiana head coach. Goes to Dallas in 2007, it feels like, and then eventually leaves to go back to Indiana. They have they didn't have many listed coaches, assistant coaches. Two of their guys, Lloyd Pierce, former Hawks head coach, and Jim Boylan, former Bulls head coach. They were head coaches in the NBA. Two of the other guys that were mentioned, uh, Jenny Bor, uh, Jenny Borick, assistant GM or assistant coach under Carlisle in Dallas, and then Mike Warner, assistant head coach under in Dallas as well. So a lot of Carlisle's guys, some experienced coaches in the NBA. And one interesting thing with Lloyd Pierce is back when Lloyd was in Atlanta, they ran a pretty similar style of offense with Trae Young to what they're doing now in Indiana. So if you have any more scheme talk, we can get that, or we can go straight into their off season.
Yeah, I think I got everything. Said my piece.
Yeah, so they previously had in this draft they had 3 second round picks. Um, Most notable of them for me was Johnny Furphy. I did like Furphy. He's a pure shooter, not really much else. At the very least, I mean, hopefully he can shoot in the NBA. He's going to go in the G League, probably work on his all-around game. Um, I'll let you. Did you have any notes on Furphy that were interesting to you?
I didn't get anything on Furphy. No, I did not.
Okay. Did you?
I
What do you?
I
Did you
got
have anything on other guys?
yeah, I got stuff on Tristan Newton.
Yeah. What
Okay.
What'd you get on Tristan?
Yeah.
You could,
So 6'5", 190, 6'6", wingspan. He's really good at playmaking, especially out of the two-man game, which is something that the Pacers like to run. Um, Pretty good rebounder for his size, 6.6 rebounds last year, playing guard. He can score off the dribble. Either whether it's getting by guys and going to the rim, or that's creating space, getting to his shot. 15 points per game last year at UConn. Um, yeah, some things that he has to improve on. He does have a pretty good 3-point shot, but if he wants it to be NBA level, he's going to have to be more consistent. And then shot selection, which is a lot of things we talk about with these guards for high profile colleges. Just sometimes they try to do too much and shoot it. But Tristan Newton, this is just a good playmaker. I think this is a guy that gives you size, um, good rebounder as well. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got on him.
yeah, reminds me a little bit of Halliburton. He doesn't have the pull-up three-point shot that Halliburton has that really makes him like really deadly, but has a lot of the similar traits. He has similar size. I think it's a good fit for him. And I mean, if this is a scheme that Halliburton can really excel in, I don't see why Newton can't at least have marginal success in a year or two. Um, I'm gonna pull up. I don't know. Um, eh, who of their second round picks, like the contract terms on them. Um, Did you get anything on uh, Enrique Freeman by chance, the 50th pick
Yeah,
this year? Okay.
yeah, I did. So this is a kind of like a wing type of player, 6'7", 212, with a 7'2" wingspan. Um, this is, pretty good shooter. I mean, he doesn't really have the height, I don't think, to be able to play, power forward or center for them. But, 37% from the 3-point line last year. He's a good rebounder, uh, really good offensive rebounder as well. He had 3.6 offensive rebounds per game last year. He's good in the post. He's a good rim protector, especially with the weak side help. Like I said, 7'2" wingspan. That is a 6'7" wing, just really good size and length. He does struggle with creating his own shot. Uh, and like I said, just consistency with the 3 point. Just a lot of things. But yeah, and then finishing through contact. But this is a guy who I really like defensively. 1.7 blocks last year. He can also knock down from 3 point line. Like you said, they've had problems with not having the size at the power forward position. Really, maybe this is a guy that can be that for them. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's interesting for sure.
He's typical power forward size on a team that is either big at the four or small at the four. You know, I did check. They signed him to a two-way. They signed Newton to a two-way. Furphy, they gave the full 4 year, $8 million rookie guaranteed. Um, you know, pretty normal stuff. I would have really kind of liked Newton to still get a guaranteed, but I mean, at the very least, it's a very good two-way player. He might play some next year for them. Um,
Correct me
again,
if I'm
they
wrong.
didn't.
Uh oh, but
You got it.
when you say two-way player, that means they're signed to G League. They're signed to a G League, and it's like an NBA G League type thing. Is
Yeah.
that what the
So
two-way contracts are? Okay.
yeah, it's technically G League salary, but they can play 35 games, or not games, but 35
Mm,
days in the NBA,
okay.
which typically just ends up being 35 games. Uh,
Yeah.
but you know, it it's typically just a way to keep second rounders under team control in case they really take a step forward in their rookie season in the G League, but not giving them that guaranteed money for the third and fourth season. Um, again, this was a draft where they didn't have too much to do. They traded their first to the Raptors in the Siakam trade. But I do like the three players that they got here. I do like, at the very least, they're taking flyers on guys who could fill out spots for them. We didn't talk much on Furphy, but maybe he has a chance to play. Maybe not this year, but next year. Uh, Solid stuff. Do you have any more on these draft picks, or are you ready to go to their normal off season?
Let's get into the off season,
All
maybe.
right, so we'll start with addition subtractions. Um, First with additions, they had two. Cole Swindler, a typical two-way guy. Um, I don't know. He might be on a two-way for them. Um, Actually, he was on an Exhibit 9. I don't even think he's currently on the team. An Exhibit 9 is essentially a summer league tryout contract. Um,
Okay.
so then James Wiseman, their other signing, they signed him to, I believe, a minimum contract for one season. That's their only addition. James Wiseman, do we have anything to mention here?
I mean, Detroit last year. I think we kind of talked about him in the Detroit episode. Not really. This is a guy that I really thought was going to be good when him and Kevon Looney were running the center at Golden State. Um, Turned out, he's not. He doesn't really have the career that we thought. But I mean, this could potentially be the backup big to Miles Turner. It's really for me James Wiseman or Isaiah Jackson. So yeah, I mean, you could be looking at their new backup center, and I mean, to get this is a guy with a lot of upside, even though he hasn't really proven it yet. Good size, good rebounder. He can finish around the rim. Can't really shoot, but which is you know not really what the Pacers like. But I think it's a good signing. I mean, you got
Yeah,
it's a minimum. So I mean, no really harm, no foul there. I like
yeah.
it.
If you have a minimum guy, he's gonna be their third center. I think. I don't. I think Isaiah Jackson and Turner are obviously way better than him. Um, but put it this way, I think Isaiah Jackson would have started in Detroit last year, and Wiseman was their third center in Detroit. At least getting the guy here in Wiseman who has a chance, like there could be some potential to tap into. It's fine on your third center spot. Usually, guys in the third center spot in NBA teams are just 7-ish footers who, they're a body to throw out there if you need them to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at the very least Wiseman does that. If you think there's more with him, there's no other place that he's going to tap into that's not Indiana. We're going to get into the lineup data, but Halliburton with bigs it creates stuff on offense. So if Wiseman's going to be good, this is where he's going to have to prove it. Otherwise, I think it's kind of done for him. Other than that, that's all I have on Wiseman. We can go on their losses.
Yep.
Another big that Tyrese, very good with. Jalen Smith last season could stretch the floor a little bit for them, could kind of protect the rim a little bit. Not a huge loss. Jackson, Isaiah Jackson, and Miles Turner were clearly the two better guys here. He goes to Chicago on a 2-year deal. Doug McDermott, they lose him. He was kind of just a last-second shooter for them. It's whatever. And then Oscar Tishibui. Um, these names. He was not even a 2A guy, but he was the bottom of the roster guy. Goes to Utah on a minimum contract, and then Isaiah Wong, currently a free agent, didn't play much for them last season. He's currently a free agent, unsigned, but with how big their roster is right now, I don't think they re-sign him. Yeah, they currently have their roster full. So, anything on those losses, I assume it would mainly be McDermott and Jalen Smith.
Yeah. I mean, I like Jalen Smith. I don't. I like I said, or like you said, this team is pretty deep. So I think on other teams this would hurt a lot losing Jalen Smith, but in the case of the Pacers, I don't think it's gonna matter that much. Like you said, Isaiah Jackson was really good for them last year. I think they just lost another kind of Miles Turner guy. Well, Miles Turner in the way that he can stretch the floor. Obviously doesn't bring the same defensively. He shot 42% last year from 3-point line, but it's not that. It's. I mean, it hurts, but I don't think they're losing sleep over it.
Yeah, like you said, he can shoot, which is different compared to Jackson. I think Jackson's the better player, but if you needed a spacer at the 5, that was
Yeah.
the differentiator between giving Jackson minutes and Jalen Smith minutes. At the end of the day, you still have your two best centers from last year. It's not going to hurt them too much to lose Jalen Smith, I don't think. Another big part of their offseason here was extensions. They had traded for Pascal or around the deadline last season. They had to re-sign him. That's why they got him at a discounted price. They ended up re-signing him 189 over 4 seasons, a 30% max contract. They kind of had to. Nobody else was really going to outbid them here. Even though I don't think Pascal's worth this 30% max, it's not too much of an overpay. It won't be too debilitating for them. And generally, I think this team has done really good with extensions. One notable one, they signed it last offseason. Tyrese Halliburton got his rookie extension. It was originally 204 over 5 seasons. We had mentioned it before. There's the All-NBA escalators that we had mentioned with Franz Wagner, Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham. There's definitely one. Evan Mobley is the other one. Halliburton essentially signed the same contract just a year earlier. the reason the players want that in there is because there's a chance, like with Halliburton, that these guys make All NBA. Halliburton might have been the 15th guy on All NBA this season, but it got him a raise from 204 to 260 on that contract. So it went from a 25% max to a 30% max. Very good stuff. Um, you got anything on Hallie and Siakam before we get their last couple bit of extensions in?
Um, well, I mean, obviously Halliburton, like I said, I think and you said you think he's really good. I think that he's really good. I think he's an elite playmaker. Definitely a re-signing you had to do, and obviously it paid off, like you said, All NBA last year. And then Pascal Siakam, he got traded this season, correct? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, so as soon as he came in, huge impact. I mean, I think he took this to from a kind of like, 7, 8 seed playing type team, to that contender in the East now. He can score from really anywhere. He's one of the reasons why their post up numbers are so great. He's very versatile. He's one of their better defenders. He's good in transition. It's just how consistent it's going to be, and he usually shows up. So I mean, just really good stuff. I was interested if you knew off the top of the head who else is getting the type of money that Siakam's getting. Do you know?
So mainly it's veterans who have hit the market a couple times. Um, I can pull up right now. Um, I'll go ahead and talk about the other contracts first, and
Yeah,
then I
go
can
ahead.
bring up the
Yeah,
Siakam stuff while you talk on them. Obi Toppin, 58 million over 4 seasons and 9% of the salary cap contract. I think just a very solid one. You bring back a guy who's really good for your offense, um, and it's not a ton of money. Aaron Naismith they signed in October of last year. I'm including it now because this contract looks great, but the season he just had, he's starting it now. 33 million over 3 years, 7% of the salary cap contract. Really good stuff there. And then this offseason, they extended Andrew Nemhard, who is 58 over 3 or 11.5% of the salary cap. And we're going to talk about Nemhard for a little bit here. Um, I think all three of these are really great contracts. I'll let you touch on those first.
yeah.
Uh,
I'll go ahead and start with Obi Toppin, a guy I really liked, a guy that got traded from New York this year, and kind of came in and also made a pretty big impact. A guy that really thrived in this Indiana offense. He ended up shooting 40% from 3 point last year. He's super athletic. I mean, we saw it in the dunk contest. You saw it in New York. Just a really good finisher around the rim. He's a good roll man and a pop shooter. Like I said, good finisher and 30%. So just really good all around. Yeah, I like it. I mean, obviously, like you said, he needs to get a little bit better at defense. He's kind of that guy that they'll put at that power forward role, and you know, is he? I don't think he's more of a wing.
yeah,
So
he's a wing
it's
and a
it,
6'10"
yeah,
body.
yeah. It's weird, but I do like the Obi Toppin extension a lot. And then I'll go ahead and talk about Aaron Neesmith. Huge for them last year. He's one of their better defenders. Really good 3 point shooter. 42% last year. I mean, that's damn near elite. 12 points per game. Um, just really good. And then Andrew Nemhard, good playmaker, good defender. He can shoot the three as well. Nine points per game last year. All these guys just fit really well in Indiana's offense, and I think they did a really good job at getting their guys and signing them for a long time. That's what you have to do when you're trying to build a good contender. And we've seen that with teams like the Celtics and the Cavs. Just really good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. You had mentioned the 30% uh, contract range. Um, my I pulled it up. Guys within the range of Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, because he got the escalator, so he got the same deal as Siakam basically. Larry Markkinen just got the 30% raise, or the raised to a 30% max. Fred VanVleet, Zach LaVine, even though he's a little overpaid, Luka Doncic and Trae Young on their rookie max extensions, and then Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert in that same range. I think when they signed
Wow.
AD and Gobert, when they signed, they were 35% maxes, but they're later on in their contracts, so now they're not
Yeah.
35% of the cap anymore with the cap
Okay. Yeah,
increase.
that's it. That's interesting to hear that. Yeah. I mean, maybe giving them a little bit more money than they need to be, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
You also got James Johnson. Did you see that one?
They re-signed him.
NBA. Yeah, they re-signed him to a 1 year deal, 1 year vet
Yeah.
minimum.
At this point in his career, he's a he's
He's like
he's
you,
a
Don
he's a
Haslem,
yeah,
pretty
he's an
much.
assistant coach on the roster.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had mentioned with Siakam with their post game, what makes it really tough is you feel like you have to guard a center on Siakam because of his post game.
Mm-hmm.
Turner will kill you with that. Like, he's a good enough player to where that just kind of doesn't work. And then Turner
Yeah.
can also space it around Siakam. I think the Turner Siakam fit is really, really good. And I think if Carlisle was here for the Sabonis Turner days, I feel like they would have made a really good offense out of that, even if it didn't have Hallie. But I feel like there still would have been a solid offense there. I had one other thing that I wanted to bring up. I forgot what it was. Anyway, that's all I think I had on these extensions. We can go forward to lineup data with them. Fun team, like we mentioned. It all
Yep.
works around
Go
Tyrese
ahead.
Haliburton.
Give me all the numbers.
Tyrese had a plus 6.3 net rating. Really solid. Tyrese with the bigs is awesome. With Turner, plus 8.6. With Obi Toppin, plus 8.7. With Isaiah Jackson, plus 8.7. His passing ability really unlocks these bigs. And these bigs can help you on defense. They're going to definitely... There's going to be a big out there at all times next season with Hallie. When Hallie goes to the bench, like you would expect, most players, their net ratings are not good. Maybe they're not bad, but they're negative, not super far negative. And with Haliburton off the court last season, they had a hard time generating the big punch with their offense that really carried them with Hallie on the court. I brought it up. I think Halliburton's when Haliburton was on the court, they were a 122 offensive rating. Overall, they were a 120. Either way, and then I can actually pull it up. Or actually, I can't pull it up with Tyrese off, but it was, you can assume that it would be around like a 117 with Tyrese off. They had one lineup that they didn't go to a ton because, the guy who really made it work wasn't there for half of the season. That could work with Tyrese off. Nemhard, who actually was one of the players who didn't see too much of a shift with Tyrese on or with Tyrese off. And then Naismith and Pascal Siakam. That three-man lineup with Tyrese off the court had a plus 4.6 net rating. Interestingly, a 125 offensive rating, which is almost, that's pretty much what they had with Tyrese on when Tyrese was healthy. So even with Tyrese off the floor, those three guys could generate a really good offense. So I don't think they're going to have a problem having one of the top couple offenses in the league next season. Other than that, that is all I really came away with the lineup data. Essentially, defensively, with them, it's always the next thing. So obviously, we know they can play, but can they guard? That's still to be determined with them.
Yeah.
So there was not much good stuff to look at on the defensive end, except Isaiah Jackson. or no, there was a Jalen Smith lineup that weirdly had a 108 defensive rating, but it was in like
Maybe he was
uh
bigger than we thought.
it was in like 100 minutes. It
Oh,
was a
okay.
weird lineup. It was Jalen Smith without Tyrese on, and I think with Nemhard Pascal or with Nemhard Naismith. It was a very specific lineup. Um, and I didn't. I should have looked who the other players who played with that lineup were. But either way, they didn't have any good lineups defensively. Um,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of the same team this season. Uh, so I don't know. We'll see what they do with their lineups next year. If you're good on that, if you have any questions there, for sure. But if you're good on that, we'll go forward to the next segment, which would be the prediction segment.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of highlight, how important TJ McConnell was for this team. Kind of like what, or I'm not really gonna highlight it, but I'm just gonna kind of talk. Well, whatever. TJ McConnell, when Halliburton was off, I think he did a really good job of operating the offense. I think that he was one of the most annoying players to watch last year because, like, why the hell is TJ McConnell cooking teams in the playoffs and in general? Obviously, he has his limitations at the 3 point line, but I mean, obviously, McConnell is not Halliburton, but he does have good playmaking ability coming off the bench. Uh, really good mid-range game. He's really clever. Good. He can finish around the rim. Not the first guy you went down there, but if needed be. I think TJ McConnell is huge for this team, and I think a lot of people do know that, but he's very underrated on this team. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like in the playoffs that they were really deep at a ton of positions. Um, yeah, that's all I got. I'm gonna pull one more thing up real quick, but unless this brings up something that I didn't expect to see, we're gonna be good to go forward into the lineup section and then the predictions shortly following it. And hold up, it just now came up. Okay, yeah. So this confirms what I was gonna say. Pascal Siakam overall net rating 3.8. With Miles Turner, it was a 3.3, and then with Isaiah Jackson, it was a negative 3.3. So the
Wow.
Jackson, yeah. So Turner is a really great fit with Siakam. Is essentially what I'm trying to say there. So
Yeah.
now lineups and predictions. Hit me with your offense or with your starting five for this team. I think we'll have a pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be pretty much what it was last year. Halliburton running the point, Nemhard, Neesmith, Siakam, and Turner.
I had the same one.
All right,
Um,
perfect.
I think with them, they're not going to have a true like straight up sub bench. They're going to obviously want a couple of those guys playing when Hallie goes to the bench. Um, McConnell as their backup point guard, I think, is a super safe bet. Um, did you have anybody outside of McConnell?
I mean, I saw they had Kendall Brown on the roster. I don't have much on Kendall Brown,
Yeah, he
so
played in the summer
but
league for them. I didn't
I would
really.
say I think that Halliburton plays enough of the game that you really only need like that 1-2 of
Yeah,
McConnell and Halliburton, to be honest. But yeah, that's the other guy I got that was
yeah.
running the point for them.
Their wing situation last season, they had Ben Shepherd as a rookie. I thought he definitely showed a lot more in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. He's a good shooter, a solid enough defender. I really like Ben Shepherd. I kind of pencil him in there as one of their wing players next season. And then they have the draft pick investment in him. So Benedict Mathurin is probably a guy who plays a good bit for them. And then they still have Toppin and Isaiah Jackson in the front court depth. Um, so then you're working with Jarris Walker, finding minutes for him. Uh, any other guys they need to find minutes for. Johnny Furphy, they just gave a guaranteed deal to. They're going to have a ton of guys getting minutes, and a lot of their roles they're going to be asked to do are not going to be difficult roles to do in the NBA. So, do you have any depth mentions that you want to make?
I mean, I think they'll do what they did last year and kind of plug and play. You know, when they need to make substitutions, they'll make them. But like you said, nothing's really set.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think we've covered most of it with Indiana. Um, do you have anything before we get into predictions?
Nope.
All right. I'm going to start here with the offensive MVP. Um,
Yeah.
so
So, oh, are you starting? Sorry.
yeah, I'll start with offensive MVP. I think it's very obvious here. It's James Wiseman. Um, but in reality, it's Tyrese Halliburton. And I think that's what you had as well. Um, one
I
of
went
the
different,
best.
but
Oh, you did?
I did. I went different.
Okay. Well,
I
I'll
have a
give that.
reason why, though. I promise. I have a. I have a. I think I have a pretty good reason why. But
Okay, I'll give the Tyrese case, and I think I know the guy you're gonna say. Are you saying Siakam?
for OPY for
Yeah,
offensive, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I'll actually say why I would say either of them.
Okay, go ahead.
Tyrese is like the guy who runs everything, and he's going to him alone could make a top five offense in the league, and probably a top three. Um, Siakam really raises their level in difficult games just because it gives them a more consistent half court option. And why is that similar to why you would have Siakam?
Yeah, kind of like when we talk about who do you go to when you need a bucket, you go to Siakam. I feel like we
Yeah,
said, he was the reason their post game was so good last year. Just an incredible offensive player. I mean, I think he's going to be averaging the most points per game on this team. Uh, followed by Halliburton. Like I said, there's a reason I have Halliburton not there. Uh, but yeah, I just think Siakam's going to bring just more scoring wise. Obviously, Halliburton is like light years ahead playmaking, but yeah, I just like Siakam.
yeah. Um, I didn't really have a solidified defensive player of the year. I'm interested in your answer, and that could probably lock mine in.
I mean, I just went Miles Turner, just because. I mean, we talked about that. Yeah, he's kind of like but I mean, around the rim where he should be, he's really good. I mean, he did average 2 blocks per game last year, and like we said, he was in a role where he was not in a favorable position to be doing that. He's one of the more mobile centers in the league. I like Miles Turner a lot. I'm, I think he's a really, really good center, and brings a lot to the table. But yeah, so I went defensive player Turner because this team's really hard to pick one. But I think if I had to
Yeah,
pick one, it would be Miles Turner.
it's hard to pick the defensive player of the year on one of the worst defenses in the league. Um, but yeah, I feel like Turner's the pick. If not, it's like Nemhard or Neesmith because they're gonna guard perimeter players the most. But yeah, Turner. We saw a couple seasons ago in it, still in Indiana, where he was a defensive player of the year candidate, like a finalist. Um, and that wasn't really there last season. I think it's just like we said before, it's the scheme stuff. With Carlisle playing him to the level a lot more. Um, I'm interested to see if that player is still there for them, and I think that's the same reason I have him as X Factor. I really want to see um, if Miles Turner still has that DPOI caliber play, and if that can even be unlocked in this Pacer system. I'm interested in what you had as X Factor.
So I went Halliburton. Like you said, he's this team. He runs everything at the offensive point. But a thing for me, I really want to see him do is be aggressive. We saw last year, I believe it was during the playoffs, where he was getting a lot of flag for just not really wanting to score. I want to see a Halliburton that's trying to dunk on someone. I want to see him driving. I want to see him stepping back, shooting it. I want to see an aggressive Tyrese Halliburton because if we do see that, I think he's offensive player of the year easily. I think he's
Yeah,
easily averaging 25 points per game, shooting 30, above 35% from 3 point line. I mean, this is a guy that can bring you to that top four contention. Um, he's the X factor. I mean, I think that he's the X factor. Yeah.
I think he had cut flack in the Milwaukee game for not scoring much, but then you go and you watch the game, and he like makes every play correctly. It's like, well, he had 8 points, but man, this team was like perfect when he was on the court. that's what Tyrese Halliburton's game is. His game's more predicated on skill than having something that you can't take away. And I mean, of course, it's got his great pull-up shooting as well and his good straight line speed, but he's just a really cerebral player. I think he's going to be in the point guards ranking in the next episode for sure. I say that.
Yeah.
Other than that, final verdict on the offseason, do we think they got better or do we think they got worse?
All right. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll go worse because you lost Jalen Smith and you added James Wiseman. I think Jalen Smith is better than James Wiseman for that fact only. That's the only reason. I think they had a good offseason though. I think they did a great job of re-signing all those guys like you said. But whether we're talking about straight up worse or better from the offseason, I'll say worse, but this will be a better team than last year.
That's exactly what I think they got worse with their roster on paper, but I think with internal development and Carlisle figuring out these lineups a little bit more, I'm not sure where we're going to end up putting them, but I think it could surprise some people where we played Indiana in the Eastern Conference rankings next season. Yeah, that's about all I got before we get in. We wrap it up. Do you got any final wrapping up notes to put on Indiana?
Nope. Just I expect a lot of good things.
Yeah, this is going to be one of my teams to watch this season. They could really
Little dark horse team.
potentially they could really shift the landscape of the East. I think. I think they're.
Do you
the
think
East,
this is? Oh, sorry.
They're the East's X factor.
I'm gonna wait. I have a question, but I'm gonna wait for the next episode. I think
right.
it makes more sense. But
All right.
yeah, I like everything you said.
We're gonna wrap it up here. This is it for the Indiana episode. Next episode will be the totalitarian review of the Eastern Conference. That episode will be coming out on the normal schedule. We will see you in that episode.